Hello, good afternoon, and welcome back to Football League World TV. My name is Toby Wilding, and in this latest episode, we are continuing our fan voice series, looking ahead to the 2022-23 season for a variety of clubs across the EFL. For this show, we're going to be focusing on Cardiff City, and joining me this afternoon to do that is Cardiff City fan Ben Johnsey. Ben, thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
Really good. Yeah, really good. Optimistic at the moment.
Great stuff. Any Cardiff fans, if you are watching, please do let us know your thoughts or any questions you'd like to ask. Do stick them in the comments and we will try to get those out on the show. Also, please do like and subscribe if you're enjoying what you're seeing. It really does help us boost the profile of the channel. But for now, let's get started. So we're going to start just quickly with a look back on the 2021-22 season for Cardiff, which obviously ended with the club 18th in the Championship table, 16 points clear of the bottom three come the end of the campaign after a bit of a turnaround under Steve Morrison after he came in place of Mick McCarthy. Ben, just a few thoughts from you on last season and in particular the job that Morrison did when he came in.
A worrying one at times. It looked quite poor heading into the January transfer window, especially because we were looking at the side we have, the form we were in, and knowing that we didn't necessarily have any money to spend, but we managed to get a few loan players in. The likes of Tommy Doyle, Jordan Hugill especially making sort of big impacts. Hugill not necessarily scoring a ridiculous amount of goals, but some really important ones that got key points. And in the end, just managed to get ourselves clear enough and far enough away from that bottom three that we were happy with. Morrison was huge to that. He came in, really helped a lot of those academy players bed in a bit more, the likes of Isaac Davies, who became a key figure in that starting lineup towards the end of the season. And I think Morrison's work just sort of got fans a bit more excited. There's a clear sort of plan there. And he obviously had an eye for the future compared to the last few managers. I mean, McCarthy did feel a bit like it was supposed to be temporary to begin with. And then he signed the extra deal. And it wasn't necessarily a look sort of long term, where with Morrison now, it's about going forward, where he can take the club. And that was sort of the feeling then. So it kept fans optimistic and maybe a few poor results in there that made some fans a bit more lenient towards that, and safety was the main thing, and we more than done that. So a poor season for sure, but one we can hope to build on and do better this time.
Yeah, as you say, certainly foundations seem to be laid there under Morrison. Given what you're saying, I kind of get the impression that sort of making him permanent manager certainly a popular decision, at least with yourself, and I would imagine the majority of Cardiff fans. But with that in mind, were you a bit surprised that his new contract only goes till the end of the season we're looking ahead to now?
Yes and no. I think when he signed the deal, he was still relatively new. It's his first role. He really impressed with us at the academy level. But I think it's understandable. I think we've been burnt a couple of times previously with managers not quite working out. Obviously, having to sort of pay up a certain amount of their contract, and with the situation, he was still a risk. As much as we were doing better, it was still it's still potentially running off the fact it's a new manager, that bounce that you get. So it was a bit of a risk, and it's also going to be a risk this season as well. We've brought in a lot of players, so how it's going to gel this season is really going to be one that we're going to have to wait to see on that. And so I'm not too surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised if quite shortly, in a few months into the season, that we see maybe an extended deal on that.
So let's sort of start to look a bit more towards this season. As you mentioned there, Ben, there's been a lot of new players coming into Cardiff over the course of the summer transfer window, 12 in total, similar sort of amount moving on as well from the first team. Do you feel like that sort of significant amount of change was needed for the club this summer?
Definitely. I mean, we had so many going out that it was vital that we brought it in. Otherwise, we could have really been looking at that bottom three, and you'd hope now that the level of squad we've got that won't hopefully be an issue. And yeah, it was huge for us. It was going to be an interesting window. We knew there was going to be a lot of people coming in. We cleared a lot of wages off the books. A lot of the players that did go out, likes of Aidan Flint, Marlon Pack, Volks, players that came in sort of just after we had come down, or Josh Murphy, another one who was here when we were in the Premier League. It just, with that amount of wages going out, a lot of them would have been high earners and not necessarily playing every game. It was needed, and I think we've done well in bringing in what we've brought in to replace them. And for sure, it's going to be a challenge still to get a whole new team to gel, the amount of different players coming in. But for sure, it was needed, and something that we're looking forward to see how it turns out.
Yeah, Romain Sawyer's there, just one of the many that have come into Cardiff, where won plenty of eye-catching signings, really, the likes of, as we say, Sawyer's and say Marlon Romeo, Callum O'Dowda, Andy Rinomota, to name but a few. There's plenty to pick from. Is there one signing in particular that stands out for you, though?
Well, the man you mentioned there, Andy Rinomota, I think that's one I'm very excited to see, sort of how he really transitions into the club, because he was a huge player for Reading. The reaction from Reading fans at the time showed that they were going to be one he was going to miss, and upsetting for them to see him go. And that's always a positive. When you sign a player in the club they were previously at, aren't happy that he's going, then there's a reason for that. And he, in pre-season, has looked very good. He's looking very tenacious, very much. He'll run the whole game, and this has only been in pre-season. There's been a few times where he's maybe really got on 50-50s with players, and the fans have liked it because it shows a bit of passion, and that's something that we really want. There was a bit of complacency, I think, towards at times certain players thinking maybe that they were slightly undroppable because we just simply didn't have the squad depth. And the amount of midfielders we brought in and the amount of players we brought in is hopefully going to really offer to stop that complacency. But Rinomota is one that I'm excited to see, because I think maybe barring the injuries, he could have gone a lot further up the table. So hopefully he can keep them sort of at a low point and really, really excel for us. So he's definitely one I'm excited to see how he does and how he just what he can offer to the club, really.
Yeah, Andy Rinomota there, certainly one who I think many championship clubs would have been keen to secure the services of for this season. So certainly a coup there for Cardiff. Among many, you might say, with the profile of players that have been brought in. But looking ahead to the rest of the summer transfer window, were there any sort of particular bits of business that you feel still outstanding, need to be done for Cardiff before the window closes?
Well, there's a glaring one really for us, and that's the striker role. We lost Kiefer Moore in January. In January, we got the two loan signings of Uche Piezo and Jordan Hugo. While they were good to sort of plug the gap, they've obviously gone back to their parent clubs, and now we're left with quite a young strike force: Mark Harris, Max Waters, Isaac Davies, who none of them really have got the clinical side to their finishing. We look at that front line, we're lacking someone who's going to get 10, 15 goals. So that's a worry for fans at the moment, is just where the goals are going to come from. And the striker role is definitely something we need to sort out. I'd say a striker, probably two, would be needed. I'd like personally a permanent signing of a slightly experienced striker. I do think we will probably go into the loan market, but as I said, a lot of the strikers we've got at the minute are young enough as it is. So I'd like to see us sort of get an older player that can come in and sort of a safe option, really, come in, get 10 to 15 goals. And because there is still the worry that if that striker role does go wrong, as good as the signings we've made elsewhere, if you're not going to score the goals, then we could end up being at the bottom side of the table, which we really, really don't want going forward. And there's many players we've brought in. There's definitely two roles in there, in that striker role, and someone to have backup to that as well. So a huge bit of business still needs to be done. But I think when that is done, we looking pretty set for the season then.
Yeah, that'll be a pretty much all-rounded transfer window for Cardiff if a striker does come in, and as you say, a permanent move always just gives that little bit more long-term stability that is good for a club. And now we're going to, having talked about that business, turn our attention to matters on the pitch for Cardiff that are coming up in the not too distant future. So, as we say, focusing now on the sort of opening month of fixtures that are coming up for Cardiff. Obviously, it's a tough start for the Bluebirds, you'd say, on the opening day at home to newly relegated Norwich City. Then it's a trip to Reading, who themselves were sort of mired in that relegation battle last season. Then Birmingham are at home again, another club who found themselves at the wrong end of the table. Then it's a trip to West Brom, the grudge match away at Bristol City, and then Preston make the trip to the Welsh capital. So we're looking through those fixtures. What do you sort of make of that as a start to the season for Cardiff?
A bit of a mix, difficult. Obviously, having a seven-side derby that early could also prove to be either very beneficial or going against us, depending how the result goes. I think the main thing going into it is just patience. We've brought so many players in. If we do get the two strikers that I think a lot of us think we need, then that take us up to 14 signings this season, and it's going to take time for that to gel, no matter how good they are. I'm excited to see a lot of them, as previously mentioned, the likes of Rinomhota, Sawyers, Shea Ojo, another name that I'm excited to see. But it's one of those ones where those fixtures are very difficult, especially that starting one against Norwich. I think the main thing we need is, if it doesn't quite go to plan, to just keep our patience, try and keep our heads up, and really eventually just try and pick up some points in those key games. The Readings, the Birminghams, they're the ones we're going to be wanting to really try and go into and pick up as many points as possible. But I think the fans and hopefully the players should really be up for that opening day against Norwich as well. So I wouldn't count us out on anything, but like I said, I think patience is going to be key for us, and it is a building process at Cardiff at the minute under Steve Morrison, and that's how we have to keep it. And no matter what happens in that opening stage, we got to keep it that way. That Bristol City one is one that like I said, could go either way. If we do lose that one, it could be catastrophic for the confidence going into the next few months. But a win has got to be vital, and I would fancy us to do it as well.
Yeah, again, Bristol City and another one of them who sort of maybe struggled a bit for consistency last season. I mean, I was going to ask you about the importance of potentially making a strong start with so many new signings, but it sort of seems to me there like the emphasis for you, given the length of the season, is more on just giving those new players a chance to gel and take the opportunities when they come along.
Yeah, for sure. It's obviously we expect sort of a certain level of performance, but I can't expect the like I said, potentially 14 new players into a squad to go in and instantly be winning every game. So out of the opening sort of 10 or so, I'd be hoping to pick up a good number of points and a few wins, a good few wins there, but not necessarily expecting us to be starting straight out of the blocks. I can see it being a season where we'll build up through it. I'm hoping sort of come November, December, we'll be a really solid outfit then that most clubs wouldn't really want to play. And that's the hope. That's a realistic hope for us, I think. I can't see us just winning every game off the bat, but it's also just we want to make sure that we're as far away from that bottom like 5 or 6 as possible, really, because we don't want to be dragged into anything. And also as well, Morrison's going to be wanting to keep his sort of faith with the hierarchy as well. So patience, but as I said, there's still an expectation of trying to get a few wins here and there. And like I said, those Birmingham's, Readings, games like that is where we really need to be picking up as many points as possible.
Definitely. Let's sort of look a bit more longer term across the course of the season. Now, as we've sort of touched upon with some of the sort of profile of the names at Cardiff have been sort of bringing in this season. There does feel like there's been a bit of a show of intent from the club, and with that in mind, in comparison with the need for so many new players to gel, what sort of position do you feel like Cardiff should be targeting this season? Is it just survival, or can they straight away be maybe thinking about a push for the top 6 this season?
I think top 6 would be a bit far for us in our first season after a complete rebuild. I mean, upwards of 14 out, including loans last season, and potentially 14 in as well is really going to take time. So I think a realistic option and a good option for Cardiff would be sort of top 12. I think I'd be very happy with sort of top 10 if we can sort of maybe make a push for it, but sort of being in around there. But if I don't think top 6 is the bar that Cardiff fans are expecting. I think if we're finishing sort of similar to where we did finish this season, so if it just doesn't click over the entire season, then that really will be an issue. If we're down sort of 15th, like 14th, 15th and below again, then that could be an issue, because we definitely have the quality of players to push further than a hell of a lot further than that. But the main thing is just letting Morrison install his plan of action, install his style of football. And while that may take a little bit of time, I think over the whole season we should hopefully eventually become quite a solid outfit, as I said, and pushing sort of towards that top half of the table would be sort of a really big improvement from us, considering where we were last year.
Yeah, and as we've sort of mentioned, obviously Steve Morrison only contracted until the end of this season, so there's a bit of uncertainty there about his future that could develop as we go on into the season. Do you feel like that sort of top half finish would be enough for him to warrant the offer of a new deal?
For sure, yeah, for sure. I think anything can happen this season, but I think the top a finish sort of in that top half, top 10, 100%, and even if it's sort of 11th, 12th, I could still see them having enough faith in him. We've made 12 signings so far, but I think we've actually spent about 50,000 on the transfer of Ollie Tanner. So transfer fee wise, he still hasn't had everything made available to him to go out and get the permanent signings that he may have wanted. So yeah, I think pushing that top half would definitely be enough to warrant a new contract. If we fall quite far below that, depends sort of how the season's gone, and probably evaluate that at the time. But yeah, for sure, that sort of top 12, I could definitely see him staying about and being allowed to then rebuild further to potentially become a solid top 6 side in the next 2 to 3 years again.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose one other argument there is that with the exception of Cedric Kipre, all of these signings have been permanent. So certainly the time is there with this squad to maybe make that sort of building blocks put in place for beyond this season. Well, that is just about all we've got time for here this afternoon. My thanks to Ben for joining me. Some really great insight, really interesting views there. Thank you to you at home for watching as well. Do hope you've enjoyed this show. And if you have, please do give us a like and a subscribe on our YouTube channel. As I say, it really does help us to boost the profile of the channel and just get that name out there and you know, sort of expand us in terms of the audience we are broadcasting to. We do have one more show coming up on FLW TV later this evening. That's at 7:30 when Ned Holmes is joined by Adam Pendlebury to look ahead to Wigan Athletics 2022-23 campaign as the Latics prepare for their return to the Championship this season. But as I say, thanks for watching, and until the next time, we will see you again very soon.